Yes, hello everyone. We are recording. Yes, hello everyone.
Hello, people.
Yes, hello everyone. It is Riel here. It's Cup of Tea. Welcome back. Today, I am so delighted to say that I am joined by mental health advocate and model Dominique Dunn. Thank you so much for joining me, Dominique. It is an
Oh, thanks
absolute
for having me.
delight to have you on the show on Cup of Tea. I appreciate you very much for coming on, taking some time out your day. Um, Today we're going to speak a little bit about health anxiety, aren't we? We're
Yes.
going to sort of dive into that. It's something that quite a few people have spoken to me about, and they've said it's it's either something they've been dealing with for a while, or it's something that's been sort of spurred on from what the mad world we're living in with COVID.
Yeah.
And I think everyone can agree just how relevant that is right now. And Dominique, as soon as you mentioned that you had your own personal experiences with dealing with health anxiety, I said this is something that needs to be spoken about. It's also relevant right now, and
Mhm.
yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that today. And I think just the mere act of talking about it is always helpful,
Yeah.
and it's something that I've experienced myself. And but yeah, before we get into that, Dominique, I just want to ask you if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit about you, your background as a model, how you took an interest in advocacy for mental health.
Yeah, so guys, I'm Dominique Dunn, model. I started at a very young age when I was 14. And my interest for advocating for mental well-being kind of came up quite, I'd say recently, in the past 2 or 3 years. And it came about when I realized, like, I was having these conversations with people in the industry, mainly models, about the stresses, that we go through, which is, it's a lot. And I realized how unhappy we were.
Mm,
And I thought, I think someone had invited me to like a mental well-being talk. And I started talking to my friends outside of the industry about what I was going through. And I realized talking about it was really helping me. And I thought, why not open a space within the industry to talk about it? I felt if I could go on my social media and post about something I was going through mentally, or how I'm coping. I think the first thing I posted was how I was coping with anxiety and depression.
mm,
And I realized so many people got back to me on it. And I saw how that fueled uh, open conversations
mm,
about mental well-being. In general, I was speaking with people outside of the industry and people within the industry, and I kind of wanted to open the conversation up within the industry so that people outside of the industry, because people outside the industry always relate themselves to models. They think we live a lavish life, and that pretense that a lot of people in the industry put on can affect people outside of the industry. So I kind of wanted to bring that together and let both sides see that we're not really living different lives, but we're going through the same thing, the
yeah.
same things. So yeah, that's what sparked my
That is
interest.
amazing. That is amazing. Honestly, what you just said about the external people watching from the outside in, and it's like, oh, they're
Yeah,
going on holiday, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're on runways and everything. But that isn't synonymous with what's going on inside of them,
yeah, no, it's not.
and it's that was really what drew me to you, your sort of openness and willingness to speak about mental health. And I know you did a couple of Instagram lives where you joined with people and you were speaking about it so openly. And I was really inspired by that, because the same reaction you had actually when you said that people were messaging you when you first spoke about anxiety and depression. When I spoke about it for the first time, people were like, "What? You seriously?"
Yeah,
They were,
literally.
and I know you've had that. Yeah, you've had that kind of
Oh yeah.
response. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like what, like and I think that was in a way a real eye opener for everyone, including myself. It was like, wow, like someone can look one certain way. They could be happy and smiling and joking, and you think they're the happiest person in the world. They're doing this, they're doing that,
Yeah.
but that isn't always the truth.
No, yeah, it's
It
not. It's
probably
not at
never is
all.
the truth. you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, regarding health anxiety, Dominique, how do you define health anxiety?
So my definition of health anxiety is what's the other terminology for it?
Hypochondria.
Hypochondria.
Yeah.
So when you're so hyper aware of symptoms in your body, and you know, you bring your own conclusions to what these can be, and they tend to be like, you know, very serious um, illnesses. Like for me, I only recently experienced hypochondria, where I thought was having a failing heart. But in your mind, you're so convinced, and even going to doctors and them saying, you know, we were aware that you're experiencing these symptoms, but it's led to nothing. There's nothing wrong with you. You know, the fact that I couldn't get reassurance from that, and I was still, you know, having mad anxiety about the symptoms I was having, to a point where it was actually making me ill. It wasn't the symptoms that was making me ill. It was my stress, my overstressing, and the chaos that was going on in my head. That was just kind of, you know, separating me from living a good life. It's just like an over
Enjoying my
obsession.
life.
Literally, yeah.
I know
My
exactly
over
what you mean.
obsession was just, yeah, it was allowing me to yeah, make a situation more than what it was.
Mhm. I know exactly what you mean. I've had this thing as well where it's like I'm planning ahead. You know, I'm like, oh, I've got like an important event on this day, or I've got an interview on this day, or I'm working on this day, and it's an important thing I want to get done. And I'm like, oh, what if I'm not well on this day? You know, and then what if I get a headache? You know, what if I'm just not feeling up to it? What if panic symptoms arise? You know, there's so many what ifs, and it becomes
Yeah,
so internalized in your thought process that you truly start to believe these things
you
are going to
truly
happen.
believe it.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem.
And I was
Actually,
doubting the doctors, the same people who have years of, you know,
yeah.
in-depth expertise. I was doubting them and just, you know, saying, they were really thinking that maybe they've missed something. Because, you know, you have cases of sometimes the doctor missed something, and
Yeah.
they're not aware of it until it's, you know, you're on your deathbed. I was very much in that mindset. And I guess as well, a member of my immediate family was diagnosed with an illness this year. So also having that as well was more for me, what's the word I'm looking for?
Kind of.
More evidence that, you know, it could be very likely that I have this as well. So yeah, it was odd being in that mindset, because I've spoken to friends who have had it, and yeah, I mean, I'm now working towards taking my mind away from that. Like, I'm still feeling the symptoms. They're not as bad as they were, but now I'm focusing more on mindfulness, and separating my symptoms and anxiety, and focusing on bettering my anxiety than bettering the symptoms. That little shift in my perspective is definitely, it's getting me through it.
Because the
Right now,
anxiety is the root cause. You
that's
know,
the real cause, and that is, you
that's the
know,
cause.
what can be even causing these pains, because the mind is
Yeah.
very strong. And
Yeah.
if you truly believe that you're feeling something and you're so focused on it, you're internalizing and focusing on the smallest little things. You know, it might be, you know, I don't listen to my heart every day, but if I decide to listen to it and I'm like, oh, actually that's beating quite fast or really hard, like there must be a problem, you know. Yeah, we can get really caught up in our head sometimes.
What kind of symptoms were you experiencing? Was it just the heart
so
rate?
so I was actually experiencing, first it was like pain in like my bust area, and then the pain shifted to just the left side, and it was like under my arm, and you know, like underneath my armpit, and then in the back, and there was like tingling and stiffness, and I did experience short of breath at some point. I did go to the doctors, and nothing they did their whole scan and everything. It all came back fine. But again, because of my connection to the person who had cancer in my family, in that region as well, I was really, really panicking. And when I did contact the doctors, I did initially say to them, like, I'm worried that it might be cancer because someone in my family had this, and you know, it might be genetic. And they didn't even the first thing they said they wanted to test was for the heart. So that shift made me panic even more, because I'm like,
they wanted to what?
If it's like, pardon?
They wanted to do what?
Oh, they wanted to, like, they wanted to test and do scans on the heart. So they were talking to me about, like, you know, heart conditions. And I was like,
and that's a triggering
heart conditions?
moment,
oh my gosh, no, like, I have a heart condition. And it's funny because as soon as they mentioned that, I then suddenly, the pain on that side intensified. And I felt that, you know, I was more aware of my heart beating, and I wasn't before. And, you know, that kind of shows, you know, because I was focusing on that,
it shows just how psychological
it is. Made it more. My heart was beating just fine, like it was yesterday, but now I'm aware of it and I'm thinking about it. It's beating harder and it's beating faster. And I've done all these tests, and you know, the doctors have said it's fine. I don't know any better than a doctor, you know, and neither does the internet. And I think it's really, I think a lot of people who have hypochondria do a lot of self-diagnosing and a lot of reading people's stories on Reddit. And you know, my uncle had that chest pain, and he passed away the following day. And then, you know, you're all up in your head all over again. So that's another thing I've been avoiding, the internet.
That is so important. That is so important, because it kind of is terrifying. I've done that before, you know, when I felt like I had something, I would Google, like I would Google my symptoms, and then it would come up with all these like horrifying things, and I'm like, and then you're like, and then you start to believe, well, yeah, it does kind of feel like that.
It does,
you know? You kind of put it together in your mind. You're like, that is it. Yeah. Oh no, I've got, you know, and that is anxiety in itself. You know, you're feeding the anxiety there. And I mean, I think the problem arises where you ignore the doctors, but listen to the internet, you know.
But and that makes absolutely no sense, right? But in your mind, you're just, I guess it's trusting other people who have experienced, because usually, I mean, if I'm reading on reviews or whatever, or chat rooms, I'm speaking to people who have also experienced this, but then I'm also, in my mind, these are also people that are probably experiencing health anxiety too, you know? But I guess in that state of mind, I'm like, someone who knows what I'm feeling and is feeling what I'm feeling is going to understand more than a doctor who's just, you know, he's not feeling my chest pain right now. But that of itself isn't a great mentality to be in.
No, that is very true.
But there's definitely steps.
It still makes sense, though. It still makes sense for someone to feel
I can still understand.
It's the relatability, right?
Yeah, definitely. Defo. But I think the first step in me trying to, and I'm still a process that I'm getting through, you know, trying to put that to the side, trust the reassurances that the doctors are giving me, and, you know, continue with mindfulness. There's been 3 steps that I adapted, and it was first getting that medical clearance from the doctor. So I wrote down all my concerns, all my symptoms, and my conclusions. So what I thought I had. Went to the doctor, told him, and then wrote down his responses. And I think it's really, in that first step, I think it's really important to challenge your conclusions. So I asked the doctor, why don't I have a heart problem? Or why can you not do the scan? And he'd, you know, give me a list of symptoms that I would have to have for him to be concerned enough to do a scan. And a lot of the times, you know, we go on Google and we see a plethora of different symptoms, you know, especially a heart condition. I mean, there's a lot of symptoms that can relate to a heart condition. Those same symptoms can also relate to acid reflux or anxiety or stress, you know. So I wrote down all his responses and everything, went home, obviously experienced some symptoms again, and I just looked back through the notes, just to, I guess, I don't know, I guess it was a means of comfort, just to remind myself, you know, that this is what a professional said. He did his test and you're okay. And from that, I guess I'll do like self-talk. If I find myself kind of like, no, but he didn't know that this pain was here when I went to see him. You know, I didn't tell him about it, or whatever. I'd kind of just talk myself out of it. And that takes a lot of self-discipline. That has come with a lot of practice, and practicing speaking to myself and believing what I'm saying. Because, you know, sometimes when you're these affirmations, whatever, sometimes you say it and you don't really believe it. So it does take time. And from that self-talk, I then just, that's like a mental distraction. So I'd have my mental distraction that will just, you know, give my mind, like pause my mind from thinking about everything, and inject something positive, and then do a physical distraction. So I'd either go turn on music and dance, or go and have a chat with a friend, or go out for a walk, or do an exercise. And doing that routine every time, like I feel something and I feel the anxiety come in, has definitely helped to untrain my mind from falling into a state of anxiety from that pain. So I feel that pain. I'm hoping eventually when I do feel the pain, it will like ignite like okay, I need to go and do something. Like I need to, you know, do something positive, or but yeah. That's really been helping.
Wow. Dominique, I just want to say you're radiating with authenticity at the moment. And, you know, to hear someone, you know, like yourself, a model, speak about mental health and what you've experienced so openly, you know, it really does move me, you know, because I know a lot of people watch that, and, you know, whether they're a model or not, it's universal, you know, what we all go through, you know. Anyone can get anxiety, depression, health anxiety, mental health challenges, and I think to hear it spoken about so openly is truly an incredible thing. And I really
I was able to explain it properly. I feel like sometimes I don't explain, my words just don't come out.
You listen, like I said, radiating authenticity. That's all I can say about that. Dominique, I have the definition actually of, before we wrap up, I have the definition of health anxiety here, because I really want to hone in and really let people understand and know just how connected the mind and body are, you know. It's connected, and it's absolutely insane. Okay, so here we go. Now this is from Healthline, which I believe to be a reputable source. So health anxiety is an obsessive and irrational worry about having a serious medical condition. It's also called illness anxiety or hypochondria. And this condition is marked by a person's imagination of physical symptoms of illness, okay? And really what I take away from this is the tricks that your mind can play on you, because I really want people to understand just how real this can be, you know, because you know, make no mistake, this, just because it's in your mind, that doesn't mean there's not physical symptoms and pain that comes with it. You know, I mean, look, how I'd relate it to is this, you know, like when you're working on a project at 4 a.m. in the morning, you're up typing and everything, and you're dealing with like extreme tiredness, you know, maybe stress and tiredness. And then from the corner of your eye, you see something run past, you know, like, oh, damn, like what was that? You know, like you're so tired, and you start to have like kind of like mini hallucinations almost, you know, like you're kind of like, you know, like, have you ever had that where you just feel like you see something?
Really I have it all the time.
Flash or something, you know, you know, and you look and then there's nothing there, but you just felt like you saw, you know, because your mind is in this state of stress or fatigue, you know, like emotional fatigue, or you're up late and, you know, your brain is, for a split second, you truly believe that something has just run past. For a split second, you believe that. And then what happens to your body? Start shaking a little bit, the heartbeat increases, you see? Your mind, that's not there, but look at the response your body has. And then when you realize and your body starts to come back down a bit. And now, just to put it into perspective so people can understand, if you're dealing with something like health anxiety, to put it on a scale, imagine that moment, that split second, but extended, extended. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, yeah.
And you could
That's such
almost,
a good connection.
do you know what I mean? You could almost relate it to like, if you have that 4 a.m. moment where you look at, let's say a monster runs past, you have that 4 a.m. moment, you look, but the monster's there, you know? And that's kind of how and so your heart's going to be beating for a longer time. That monster's following you around for the next couple of hours. You're going to be shaking for a longer time. The monster's not there, but it's so real to you, and you believe it
It's
because it
so
looks like,
real.
and that's how health anxiety, and it's a strange comparison, but that's kind of how it is in a way, because you truly believe that you're feeling some sort of sensation, and you believe it to the point where it's real in your mind, and that's the world that's the world you're living in. You're almost cut off from reality, so it really is a tricky thing. um and now what you spoke about with the doctors, I want to ask you actually, Dominique, what because this is very important as well. Why do you think people don't want to accept what the doctors have to say? Why do you think people reject what the doctors say, and if there's a medical examination, they think, oh, they've missed something, or where do you think that comes from? Against all the evidence of you being okay and perfectly healthy, people still feel like, oh, there's a condition that hasn't been discovered yet, and I have that.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I think
Where does that come from?
I think that I mean, it comes from not just one thing, many different factors, factoring on that. For me, it was the fact that I was feeling this pain. So, in fact, the first call I had with my GP, she did mention anxiety, and I was like, first of all, I'm not aware that I'm anxious about anything. Like, I don't feel like I'm experiencing anxiety right now. What I do feel is this physical pain. And again, with what you're saying, like, it was a physical pain. Like, I was actually feeling this, and this doctor is telling me, you're feeling this, but it has nothing, it's not normal. And I think it's also for me, it was experiencing pains that I hadn't experienced before. So that's what made it even more real in my mind, and why it made me hard to believe that there was nothing going on. Secondly, because obviously I am aware of cases where doctors have misdiagnosed people, haven't didn't identify a particular illness at the time, but did at a later stage when it was much more severe. I think it's important for people to be aware, like, it really is a very difficult place to be in mentally, because I can't stress, like, I don't think I could stress enough how real it feels. Like, you really, there was a point where I actually messaged my best friend, and I was like, if you don't hear from me tomorrow, just like check up on me, because I really feel like it was the worst. I was feeling the symptoms, and I was really scared to go to sleep at that point, because I was just so afraid that my heart was going to fail, or I was going to have a stroke or heart attack. And even saying that now is just so irrational, because I've spoken to people who have had strokes before, and the things that they felt were far worse than what I was going through. They didn't have to ask a doctor to check on them. Like, it was prevalent that they were ill,
So what would you say, and I know you mentioned mindfulness before as well, someone that is experiencing health anxiety, what would you say they could do to sort of overcome is a strong word, because how do you just overcome something, but sort of
I like to
dull
say
the
to get through
symptoms,
problems.
or sorry?
No, I like to say to get through problems, because I think there's a lot of things that you may not necessarily overcome, but you learn to live with.
Yes. You learn to manage it.
Yeah, you learn to manage it. So to get through it, again, I definitely say to the power of writing things down on paper, and not just having it in your head or even on your phone. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's something very deep in the connection of pen and paper, and I won't get too far into that, but writing down everything that you're feeling on paper, all the symptoms, all the pains, where about it is, how it feels, the intensity of it from 1 to 10, being very, very literally, like, kind of spilling your mind out on paper so you can see it. I think that really helps with giving yourself clarity. and restructuring your thoughts, categorizing your thoughts. I don't know, for me, it's nice to, I feel like I have physical control when I put my thoughts on paper. So from that, then I think it's very important to have that clearance from a doctor. So to go to a doctor with those notes, obviously be very mindful. If you've got 6 pages of notes, maybe condense it to the more important things. Have that, write your notes down from your doctor to reflect on when you're in that state again, and to practice talking to yourself, supporting yourself, having that mental distraction, giving yourself a means of distracting yourself mentally. Meditation is such a great practice to get yourself into, so that you're really in tune with your body and your mind, and having a physical distraction as well. So for me, having a mental distraction, a physical distraction, and always writing down how I'm feeling, are things that has been helping to get me through this as well.
Absolutely, that's amazing.
And also talking to friends about it. I think it's good to get constant reassurance when you're having hypochondria, going through health anxiety. So I'll talk to my friends, and if it gets a bit overbearing, I talk to them. They already know what I'm going through, so they're able to be like, Dominique, you've gone to the doctors, you don't know any better. Don't open your laptop, don't go on your phone. Let's go listen to music. Let's go do something. Having having an external support as well. If you're able to have a therapist work with you one-on-one, because even though there's a lot of self-help books out there, I see that they tend to kind of just generalize. When you're trying to get through something, especially mentally, it has to be more personal, and the therapy that you go through has to be specifically for you and what you're going through and how your mind works. So if you're able to get a therapist as external support as well, that would be amazing, because they have a plethora of different techniques and things and practices to help you gain control of your mind, because there's certain things and tips and tricks and techniques that can help you to condition your mind in a different way. So yeah, those are the things that I suggest.
Very nice. I completely agree, 100%. I like that a lot of what you were talking about is things you could do from home as well.
From home,
the meditation, the mindfulness, writing things down, and especially right now. I mean, it goes without saying, but with COVID, just living in this currently in this pandemic, you can only imagine the heightened health anxiety that people are experiencing. And perhaps people are not even in a position where they're able to get therapy. Maybe they can't afford it, or it's not available to them, they don't have easy access to it. Of course, if they can, that's fantastic. But if they can't, it's good to know that there is alternative options as well. It's very interesting. I think when one of my things was panic attacks. That was a very that was something that really sort of had a significant effect on me, and that's something I went to therapy to sort of to try to rationalize and understand why this was happening and whatnot. And I think the one thing with panic attacks is that sometimes you fear having a panic attack, so that starts to bring on a panic attack. You're like, oh, I don't want it, and then that's all you think about. So it's like, oh, now I'm feeling panic symptoms of having a panic attack. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And one thing that I'll never forget in therapy was when she really broke down what my body was experiencing during panic attacks, or the lead up to a panic attack. What is going on? The increased heart rate, the kind of hyper awareness of reality, just feeling like everything was just like, that dizziness, that weakness, that fragility. just feeling fragile. That she kind of put that all into perspective, and she kind of she kind of took it back to caveman times, you know, where there's a guy in a jungle and he's getting chased by a bear and he's feeling all these, like, you know, his body goes into like fight or flight mode. And she kind of phrased it in a way that was like, it comes across as a bad thing, but this is your body's sort of defense mechanism. Your body is trying to help you here. So she really sort of put it into perspective what my body is going through, and that rational experience of like understanding, okay, so next time I felt symptoms come on, it was kind of like I have a clearer understanding of what is going on. It wasn't so unknown to me, you know. And I think the knowing helps, you know, because you're not left in the dark anymore, you know. So it helped me to, so I think just a last point with health anxiety is what could also help people is really rationalizing your thoughts, and, you know, I kind of seeing it as like you're putting your thoughts on trial and you're the judge, right? How rational are these thoughts? Am I fine? And then I start thinking about, oh, I've got a pain here, and then does it come on? Really think about that. You didn't have it, then you started thinking about it and it came on. You know, really break it down and start to think about it. Because then when you cease to believe in something, then it kind of doesn't have the same effect on you. Not to say it gets rid of it, but it doesn't have the same effect. And that's always progression. So that's just one last point I wanted to add. Dominique, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. That was such a great time. Yeah. It's a shame I've come to an end.
It's been so much fun to interact with you and connect with you on Instagram, and talk to you about mental health, because there is a kind of catharsis in talking about mental health itself, you know. But for me it's great because it helps me to it kind of gives me a bit of relief, you know, to say, because I mean, you internalize things and then when you say it, it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad, you know.
It wasn't, literally, right? It's when things are in your head, it's just, it seems so chaotic. And again, this is why I love to write, have like a brain fart on paper, because when you put it on paper, it doesn't seem as intense as when it's in your head. And the same with talking about it, it makes it, I don't know, it just,
it normalizes it, doesn't it? It's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. You know,
this is fine. As soon as you talk about it, it's crazy, because especially around mental well-being, or just well-being in general, when you lock everything in, you feel like you're the only person that's going through it, and that just makes it even worse. And as soon as you start talking about it, or even, you know, when I first spoke about mental well-being on my page, I was blown away by how many people were feeling the same thing. I was like, what? This is normal.
It's
crazy. But yeah, I always say opening up a conversation about anything is the first step in getting somewhere.
Absolutely. Dominique, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you so much. And I think we'll all agree, everyone that watches this will all agree, you've been an absolute delight. And we all thank you for opening up about mental health, because it's helped me. And I know it's going to help a lot of other people. And I urge anyone to go follow Dominique, follow her journey on Instagram. All her information will be in the description. Thank you so much. And Dominique, you're welcome back on the podcast anytime, obviously.
Thank you. I look forward to
and thank you so much for joining, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace out from me and Miss Dunn. We are done.
We are done. That's a wrap.
It's a wrap.